The chandeliers over Cross Hall glimmer like captured stars, but the room itself holds its breath. Cameras are barred outside the iron gate. Inside, 10 witnesses and a contract wait for two people who did not ask for each other. Nora Hale can feel the pen before she sees it. Heavy, cold, engraved with the Crossworks crest, it sits beside the vows like a dare. Her mother's prescription bottle is in her clutch, the label curled at the edges from too many nights in damp air. She looks up and meets the eyes of the man she is about to marry. Adrian Cross is all angles and restraint. A navy suit cut to sit cleanly in the chair, a jaw that rarely relaxes, hands stronger than they look. The last time those hands gripped anything heavier than a cane, a car rolled twice on a rain-slick road and stole the certainty from his legs. He nods once at Nora. It is not unfriendly. It is a treaty between strangers. "Do you, Nora Hale, take?" Her throat tightens. She thinks of the florist cooler that no longer hums, of invoices stamped final notice, of Maya Hale asleep upright on a waiting room chair because the copay arrived before relief did. She thinks of the Cross Foundation email. "We will cover the liens, the procedures, the interest. 6 months. Public stability for the company. No intimacy required. You may leave at term." "I do," she whispers, and the words taste like metal. "Do you, Adrian Cross, take?" His eyes stay on hers as he says it. "I do." "Then you may." The kiss is not a spectacle. It is careful, a breath of warmth on a winter surface. Her palm steadies lightly against his shoulder to balance. Beneath her hand, a subtle tremor answers, not from fear but from somewhere deeper, a nerve waking. Across the aisle, Camilla Reyes, the physiotherapist, goes very still. On Adrian's wrist, the discreet monitor he wears to map muscle spiking records a blip. The priest says something about rings. Nora barely hears it over the sudden ruthless hope that lands in her chest, uninvited and bright. After the ceremony, the contract folder opens like a mouth. Clause 4, separate rooms. Clause 7, attend all public events jointly. Clause 10, the spouse may exit the marriage at 6 months without penalty. Adrian taps the page with a measured finger. "You will have privacy," he says. "If the press bites, my legal team will bite harder. I am not asking for charity, Ms. Hale, only steadiness." "I do not do charity," Nora says, finding steel she forgot she had. "I do reciprocity." A ghost of a smile touches his mouth. "Then we understand each other." The estate is a museum of success. Glass, stone, a view of the city's spine of towers. In the rehab room tucked behind the library, parallel bars shine under skylight. Camilla meets them there at dusk, sets a small metronome on the ledge, slides it to Nora. "1 beat per transfer," she says. "If you are going to play wife, learn his tempo." "I am not playing anything," Nora says, but she pockets the metronome anyway. Adrian squares his shoulders, palms the bar, breathes as Camilla counts. 1 beat to load, 1 to lift, 1 to slide. Sweat beads at his temple, the line of his throat flexes with effort. Nora cannot stop watching the rhythm, the human fact of it, how a body argues with itself and still answers. "Again," Adrian says. "Enough for tonight," Camilla answers, firm. She looks at Nora. "He will go until he shakes apart if you let him." Later, in the blue quiet of the guest wing, Nora stands by a window and sees the press lights flaring beyond the gate like distant lightning. The ring on her finger is warm now, not a shackle but a signal. She takes out the metronome, winds it, and listens to the clean tick-tick. Somewhere down the hall, he is probably pretending not to listen to his own pain. She pictures the way his hand steadied under her palm when she kissed him. If this story moves you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. Nora sets the metronome on her nightstand and lets it keep time in the dark until her breathing matches it. Across the house, Adrian stares at the ceiling and counts the same beats. 2 strangers, same rhythm. Neither of them knows it yet, but the thing they have just built is not a cover story. It is a bridge. Morning brings gray light and a schedule. Camilla texts at 6:45, bars at 7, hydration before load. Nora carries 2 mugs into the rehab room, steam curling in the cold brightness. Adrian is already in position, wheels locked, gaze on the bars like a climber measuring a cliff. "Miss Hale," he says, acknowledging her without deflecting focus. "Nora," she corrects, setting a mug within reach. "And this is not charity, it is coffee." Camilla taps the frame with her knuckles. "We will ladder today, 10 transfers in sets of 2. If the pain spikes past 8, you stop. Pride is not a muscle we train." The first set is clumsy. His right quad fires late, his shoulders overcompensate. By the third set, breath roughens. Nora winds the metronome and counts softly under her breath. By the fifth, sweat darkens his shirt. On the sixth, his hand slips. She is there before the sound of the skid finishes, bracing his elbow with the flat, calm pressure of someone who has carried too many buckets up old stairs. "I have you," she says, and the words are not theatrical. They are simple. They belong to the room. Camilla nods once satisfied. Again. After they sit in the sunroom that pretends it is not winter. The city is a pale silhouette beyond the trees. Adrian cradles the mug like a strategy. "Why flowers?" he asks finally. "You could have done anything else." "Flowers make tired rooms remember what they are for," Nora says. "Hospitals forget. Weddings too." He almost smiles. "And marriages of convenience." "Especially those," she says, and they both let the honesty sit between them like a shared coat. That afternoon, optics begin. A foundation tour, 3 cameras. Victor Lang in a suit that says he never sweats. He shakes Nora's hand as if testing for cracks. "We are grateful for your service to Crossworks," he says loudly, so a boom mic can catch it. A healing image matters. Nora hears the capital letters in his smile. She refuses to give them back to him. "Healing actions matter more," she says, adjusting the angle of Adrian's chair so the sunlight does not blind him. Victor's team has arranged a lab walkthrough. On cue, a junior tech accidentally bumps a cart. A tray tips toward the chair. The world compresses into a second. Nora moves first. She blocks the wheel with her knee, palms the tray, absorbs the shock with her shoulders. Metal sings against metal, then settles. The room stares. Adrian looks up at her, eyes surprised, then grateful, then careful. "Progress is not linear," Nora says to the cameras, voice steady. "Some days you stand, some days you brace. The point is you keep moving toward better." The clip goes everywhere in an hour. Donations spike. Victor's jaw tightens 1 millimeter. Camilla sends a single text, "Nice footwork." That night, Adrian finds Nora in the quiet kitchen rotating carnations into clean water, hands sure and quick. He watches her for a moment like a man trying to memorize a new language. "Thank you," he says. "For catching stainless steel," she teases. "For translating power into care in front of a lens," he answers. "It matters." She sets a bloom in a small glass and pushes it toward him. "You do not owe me gratitude. You owe me honesty. Did you know Victor planned that?" "I suspected a test," he says, and the way he says it tells her everything. About loyalty, about political weather, about the cost of being seen as a symbol instead of a person. "I did not expect you to meet it like that." "I told you," she says, "I do reciprocity." At 2:07 a.m., the power flickers and dies. The estate hum drops to a strange silence. Emergency lighting paints the hallways in low amber. Nora steps into the corridor with the metronome in her pocket and hears a soft metallic ring, an elevator that has stopped between floors. She pries the doors as far as they will go. Inside, Adrian is calm in the dimness, jaw tight, one hand on the rail. "Backup is 5 minutes out," he says. "You should not be here." "You are my spouse for the next 6 months," she says. "Power outages are included in spousal coverage." He huffs a laugh. The metronome in her hand ticks like a small brave heart. "This thing," she says, "is overeager." It is honest, he says, unlike most rooms I enter. They stand in the amber quiet, her shoulder braced to the door, his hand braced to the rail, listening to the same tiny beat. When the power returns, the elevator jolts and settles. The doors open. Neither of them moves first. "Good night, Nora," he says finally. "Good night, Adrian." She goes to her room and sets the metronome down. It keeps the same time it has always kept. Only now, when she hears it, she does not feel like an extra body in a borrowed house. She feels like a person who has started something and intends to see it through. By the end of week 2, routine hardens into ritual. The estate staff learns to leave 2 mugs by the bars. Camilla learns that Nora's counting thread never breaks. Adrian learns that he can fail in front of 2 women and not lose his name. The foundation invites Nora to a planning session. She is not there as a wife. She is there as a citizen who has sat in too many plastic chairs. She brings a 1-page pitch titled The Open Heart Ward, a cross-subsidized cardiac unit for underinsured patients. It is sober, costed, humble. Victor Lang skims it with a smile that is all enamel. "Sweet," he says, "unscalable." Nora does not flinch. Scalable is a choice, dignity is the point. Adrian at the head of the table watches the exchange with his palm flat on the wood, a grounding move he has adopted since the crash. "We will pilot," he says. 6 months, metrics at 90 days. Victor tilts his head as if listening to a far-off siren. "Shareholders will have questions about priorities." "They can read the numbers," Adrian replies. "And if they need a human answer, they can visit a floor where waiting is the only thing faster than the heart monitor." After the meeting, in the corridor lined with awards that feel suddenly heavy, Adrian rolls beside Nora. "You were ready to lose," he says. "I was ready to be clear," she answers. "Losing and clarity are not the same." He looks at her like he is seeing an equation that balances. "Will you lead the pilot through the foundation?" "This was supposed to be a charade," she says, but her voice warms despite herself. "It was supposed to stabilize a company," he says. "Turns out it might stabilize something else." That night they do not celebrate, they calibrate. Camilla draws up a more aggressive ladder and Adrian attempts a 3-second stand. The first try stalls at 2. The second collapses at 1. On the third, for an impossible blink, he is upright. He is not elegant, he is not even balanced, but his eyes lift as if windows have opened behind them. Nora does not clap. She exhales as if someone has removed a weight she did not know she carried. "Again tomorrow," she says. The smear arrives like weather. A blog post with anonymous sources, a headline that pairs florist with fortune, a speculative podcast about optics marriages. In the comments, strangers build towers of certainty out of air. Nora closes her laptop and goes to the garden. The snow on the hedges looks like something the sky apologized for. Adrian finds her there, shoulders squared against the cold. "You do not have to read any of it," he says. "I stopped," she says. "But stopping does not erase the image of a person I have never met calling me an invoice." "I have a legal department," he says. "I can." "Law will not change hearts," she says softly. "Only conduct does." His silence is the kind that means agreement. He turns the chair so he faces her fully. "Then let me adjust mine. I should have warned you about the cost of proximity." "You did," she says. "You gave me a clause to leave." "And if you used it?" he asks. She puts a hand on the back of his chair, not possessively, not dramatically, just there. "Then who will count the beats?" In the days that follow, the pilot ward quietly takes a first breath. A cardiologist agrees to split shifts. A grocer donates fruit. The florist cooler, Nora's cooler, hums again because an anonymous donor paid the shop's electric arrears. She pretends not to know it was the Cross family office. He pretends not to notice that she pretends. On Friday, the foundation hosts a small donor night to seed the ward. Victor schedules it in the research atrium with its too shiny floor. He offers a toast that includes the word inspirational twice. Adrian's wheel catches a ridge hidden by a carpet seam. Nora is already moving. This time there is no tray, no clang, no theater. There is only her hand on the axle, her knee blocking the slide, her eyes on his, saying what her mouth does not. We do not perform. We proceed. A photographer captures the second. The image goes wider than any smear. Two people working in the same direction with no ornament but intention. That night when the doors close and the house folds back into quiet, Adrian stops at the threshold of the rehab room. I am tired of being filmed falling, he says. I want to be witnessed trying. It is the same thing from the right angle, Nora answers, winding the metronome. Ready. Ready, he says, and for the first time the word sounds like something he chose. Victor changes tactics. If he cannot break optics, he will break timing. He calls an emergency leadership fitness review. 3 weeks from today, Adrian must present physical and strategic capability to the board. If he fails, Victor will be named acting CEO. The house becomes a gym with a boardroom calendar. Camilla designs 2-a-day sessions with rest science built in. Nora runs interference with donors and procurement for the pilot ward, then shows up at the bars with the metronome and a bottle of electrolyte water labeled with a ridiculous floral sticker that makes Adrian laugh exactly once each session because she insists. Progress is not linear. Some mornings Adrian trembles at beat 2 and swears under his breath. Some nights he glides through transfers like muscle memory woke up while he slept. Nora learns when to speak and when to be quiet. Her voice becomes a rail he can hold. Load, breathe, 1, 2, shift. He starts reading her pitch deck drafts for the ward, leaving notes in the margins in neat, precise block letters. She starts leaving him clippings from small-town papers about families who sold used furniture to buy time for a father's heart. They do not call it intimacy. They call it logistics. Both of them are lying and both of them know it. On the second Tuesday, after an afternoon of clean sets, Adrian asks, "What does freedom look like to you?" "Not having to check a bank app before I call a doctor," she says. "You." He looks at his hands, being able to stand in a room without computing exits. They look at each other for a beat too long. The metronome ticks like an audience refusing to cough. The smear machine grinds louder. A paparazzo shouts a question about rented wife. Adrian stops the chair with a look so flat it becomes a wall. "Ask about the ward," he says, "or keep your mouth closed in a house built by people who bleed." That night Nora finds a cardboard box outside her door. Inside, a metronome older than the one she carries, brass edges dulled by use. A note in Camilla's slip-sharp print. Adrian learned on this. It was his father's. "It is yours now too if you want it." Nora holds the weight of it in her palms and feels something unfamiliar and large. A sense that she stands inside a story that might outlast her fear. 3 days before the review, Victor files a memo arguing to remove Adrian's voting rights for safety. The board splits. The deciding vote rests with a shy, principled director who has never met Nora. She asks for a private tour of the pilot ward site. Nora walks her through the half-painted rooms, the new beds sealed in plastic, the windows that will look out over a stretch of sky people forget to notice when they are afraid. "This is not charity," Nora says. "It is infrastructure for courage. When people know the room is there, they make different choices." The director listens. The memo fails by 1 vote. Victor smiles without teeth. "Well played," he says in the lobby. "Enjoy your hall monitor phase while it lasts." On the morning of the review, the city is the color of paper. Camilla tapes Adrian's knee. Nora straightens his tie. No camera watches these motions. No quote will be pulled. They belong to the hardest part of any leadership story, the part where help is not an insult. At Crossworks Tower, the boardroom smells faintly of lemon and worry. Victor presides with an air of inevitability. Adrian enters without fanfare, cane in hand, back straight. Nora sits in the second row, not on stage, exactly where he can see her and where Victor cannot use her as a target. Adrian opens a file, but when he speaks, he does not look down. "You will see gate video from this week," he says. "You will see strategy models for the foundation's pivot, but I will start with something less impressive. I fell 31 times this month." A murmur rolls. He continues. "I fell because I am training a body to believe what my mind already knows. That belief is work. I am doing it." He walks 3 slow, deliberate steps to the screen, hand light on the cane. He could have rolled. He does not. He stands, not long, not easy, but true. In the second row, Nora feels the metronome in her pocket like a heartbeat she borrowed, and intends to return with interest. The vote will come later. The smear will not stop. The ward is not built yet. But for this minute, the house he lives in is not a prison or a stage. It is a room with enough air. The review ends in a stalemate. Victor does not have the votes to oust him. Adrian does not yet have the votes to be untouchable. The board schedules a second session in 4 weeks. The clock starts again. Victor pivots to personal attack. A source leaks that Nora received a quiet payout. It is a lie, but lies are cheaper than truth. Nora's phone becomes a museum of strangers' opinions. She turns it face down and goes to the rehab room where the only verdict that matters is whether a foot clears a floor. Adrian sees the change in her shoulders. "Tell me who called," he says. "It does not matter." "It matters to me," he says, and the way he says it is not performance. She sits on the bench opposite him. "My mother asked if we are in love," she says. "I told her we are in practice." He blinks, then he nods once. "We are." Camilla brings a new drill, short unsupported stand with tactile cueing. Nora's hands become the cue, one on his sternum to remind breath of where to go, one hovering at the small of his back to tell balance that help exists. He stands for 4 seconds, then 5. On 6, his eyes find hers and do not move. "Again," he says, breath ragged. "Again," she answers. The foundation releases a short film about the ward. No voiceover, no strings tugging at tears. Just hands, nurses, janitors, surgeons, patients, doing the ordinary holy work of keeping each other alive. The final shot is a metronome ticking on a sill. The comments, for once, are not warfare. They are thank yous. Victor tries one more thing. He summons Nora alone to a spouse debrief, a meeting that is technically allowed and spiritually rotten. He sits in the glass conference room like a man auditioning for a cautionary tale. "Why not take the money?" he asks conversationally. "You will not be here long. When this collapses, and it will, you will have nothing but receipts." Nora looks at the city beyond his shoulder. "I will have a ward that keeps a stranger's father alive long enough to hear April baseball on the radio," she says. "I will have that metronome you hate." Victor's smile cracks. "You two think this is poetry." "No," she says. "We think this is policy with a soul." She leaves before he can perform the next line. In the hall, her legs tremble from the adrenaline she refuses to show in the room. When the elevator doors open, Adrian is there. He is not supposed to be walking this much yet. He is. He has come for her. They ride down in silence, the honest kind that warms. In the car, he says, "You do not have to let him talk to you that way." "I did not," she says. "I let him talk near me while I refused to change what I am doing." He laughs, the sound quick and surprised. "I like your definitions." At home, thunder rolls. The storm that has scored their milestones returns as if to keep continuity. They do not dramatize it. They train. In the last session before midnight, Adrian stands for 8 seconds. Nora forgets to breathe. He leans, she braces. The metronome ticks like a clock that loves them. When he sinks back to the chair, he does not look triumphant. He looks young. "I thought standing would feel like winning," he says. "It feels like not drowning." "That is winning," she says. That is exactly what it is. He looks at her hand where it rests on the rail. Nora, if this were not a contract. It is, she says softly, but a contract can become a promise if you keep choosing it. Outside, the rain does not apologize. Inside, they stay where they are a moment longer than practical, listening to the low, brave sound of time continuing, and decide privately, separately, to keep choosing. 3 things happen in the same week. The ward opens quietly to its first patients. Adrian walks 10 steps with Camilla's spot and Nora's voice, and the smear machine finds a new angle: sabotage. A whistleblower email hits the board. It claims Crossworks manipulated data to win a grant. Attached are doctored screenshots and a timeline that points, conveniently, to Adrian's crash night. Victor calls for an emergency ethics hearing. Reporters light their torches. Adrian does not wait to react in a boardroom. He asks the foundation's independent auditor to scrub every grant, then calls the district attorney about the crash. "If I lose my chair to truth," he says to Nora, "so be it. I will not keep it with rot under the legs." "Say that again in the hearing," she says, "and bring receipts." They work all night with Camilla and a small team of engineers who trained with them at 2 a.m. for years. They reconstruct the system logs. They find the edit trails. They find the wrong time signatures that point not to human clumsiness, but to a practiced hand. The trail ends at a contractor Victor promoted. At the hearing, Victor looks bored. He will not for long. Adrian wheels in, then rises to stand for his opening sentence. He does not stay up through the whole thing. He does not pretend to. He sits when he needs to and looks like a man who knows that the posture of truth is not theatrical. "We did not manipulate data," he says. "We manipulated our schedule to finish a prototype that will have certain recovery times. Here is the audit. Here is the contractor's access. Here is the motion to refer this to law enforcement that I filed this morning with my name first." He slides folders across the table. Paper makes a clean sound when it lands exactly where it belongs. Victor tries grace. "This is passionate, Adrian." "This is evidence," Adrian says. "Passion is what got me through 31 falls. Evidence is what will get this company through your storm." Nora watches the faces around the table change shape, the way water changes direction when a dam breaks. Fear drains out. Purpose floods in. At the back of the room, Camilla grins in a way that makes even the most expensive suits look like high school uniforms. The board removes Victor as chair pending investigation. It is not a victory parade. It is simply a room that will not host a lie. That night in the gym that has seen their worst, Adrian stands for 12 seconds. He laughs and almost weeps at the same time. Nora cannot help herself. She presses her forehead to his shoulder for the last 3 beats, and the metronome sounds impossibly like applause. When they pull back, neither of them pretends it did not happen. "After the term," Adrian says, voice unsteady, "I want to ask you something without a clause attached." "Ask me now," she says, meeting him straight. "Stay," he says, "not for optics, for tempo." She closes her eyes for a heartbeat. "Let us let the ward breathe first." "Then let me say it a different way," he says. "I will keep time with you, however you choose to move." Outside, the storm has finally walked itself out over the river. In the quiet, 2 people who began as a headline stand in a small, bright room that has turned them into a reason. Peace never lasts unchallenged. Victor, cornered, goes reckless. He feeds a tabloid a file dredging up Nora's old debts, frames them as secret payouts, and adds a photograph clip to suggest a kiss with a cardiologist who is actually her cousin. The internet does not check cousins. Nora packs a small bag. She is not running, she is refusing to be ammunition. She writes a note and leaves it with the brass metronome on Adrian's desk. "If you need to stand, stand. If you need to speak, speak. If you need me, the ward is where I will be, doing the thing we said we would do." Adrian finds the note and forgets how to breathe for a second. Then he remembers what she taught him about air and keeps going. He attends morning therapy alone. He testifies in the DA's office alone. He reads to a man in the ward waiting for a bypass because the nurse is slammed. He is not alone, but he is learning to move like he is enough even when his hand is empty. 3 days pass. He walks the length of the parallel bars without Camilla's touch. He sits down and laughs out loud in an empty room. On the 4th day, the DA calls. The contractor flipped. Victor is charged. The smear retracts. Quiet falls, the good kind. Adrian goes to the ward at dusk. He finds Nora in a hallway holding a trembling mother's hand while a surgeon explains risks with mercy. He waits. When the conversation ends, Nora turns and sees him. She does not rush. She walks steady, the way people do when they intend to arrive exactly where they are going. "You stood without me," she says. "I did what you told me," he answers. "I decided not to be afraid of hope." She studies his face like a document. "And now?" "Now I would like to be afraid with you," he says, and the quiet that follows is not hesitation. It is consent considering its shape. They decide to face the city together. A press conference, not to gloat but to mark a turn. The ward behind them hums with ordinary courage. Camilla stands off camera, arms folded like a lighthouse. Adrian steps to the podium with his cane and his proof. "We are not here to sell a story," he says. "We are here to report results. Sabotage failed. Oversight worked. The ward is open. If you want to know what leadership looks like, do not photograph me. Photograph the nurses who kept person after person alive while men in suits tried to make themselves taller." He turns to Nora. He does not ask if she wants the mic. He knows. She steps up and says, "I'm married into optics. I stayed for outcomes. If you need a headline, write this. We chose to be useful." The clip travels. For once, the comments are mostly a chorus of same. That evening, the house is warm in a way that has nothing to do with thermostats. They do not train. They cook badly and laugh, and when the metronome ticks on the counter, it feels like a friend who refuses to leave early. On the balcony, he says, "After the 6 months, will you keep counting for me?" She says, "After the 6 months, I'm going to ask you to count for me too." "In what?" "In everything." He leans, and this kiss is not cautious. It is the end of a sentence they have been writing with their days. A garden behind the ward, string lights, not chandeliers, patients in street clothes, nurses off shift, Camilla in an actual dress. The efficient is a social worker who has seen more vows kept than broken. They do not invite the press. Someone films on a phone, but only to remember. Nora carries the brass metronome instead of a bouquet. She sets it on a small table. Tick, tick, not loud, just true. Adrian stands without the cane for the first 20 seconds of the ceremony. When his legs ask for help, he takes it without shame and without apology because love adjusted for reality is not lesser love. It is love that can last. The vows are short. "I thought power meant never needing a hand," he says. "You taught me leadership is choosing whose hand to take." "I thought love would fix what was broken," she says. "You taught me it is the courage to heal in public and in private." The efficient smiles. "By the authority vested in me by the state and by the people who kept time when you lost count. I pronounce you married." He kisses her. The metronome ticks. Somewhere a monitor beeps a happy rhythm, a child laughs, and a nurse who has seen too many endings watches a beginning and nods once like a benediction. Justice is not a headline. It is Victor Lang sentenced and the ward budget funded. Commitment is not a ring. It is the choice they will make tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off and the bars wait and the coffee steams and the world asks again, "Will you keep going?" Yes, in time, together.